to the 2019 St Andrews Annual Lecture. Just for the students, this is one of the mandatory sessions for leadership, so make sure you sign in and sign out. And let your mates know who couldn't attend tonight that there will be a video. They do need to get that work done and finish it up quick smart. There was an email that went out to all you guys just explaining exactly what you needed to do to complete leadership. There will, for you as well, tomorrow be a very short reflective survey around the leadership program that you do need to complete. So we're particularly keen for all the people that have gone for election, want to have nominated for election on Monday, to get that completed by Monday. But we'd love you all to get it completed as soon as we can, so that then we can look to selecting, with the help of the new HouseCom and Wayne and myself, the mentors and pastoral leaders. So, Sumant Badami, Monty, and I understand he's called Monty because his brother couldn't pronounce Sumant, and so it became Munt and then Monty. Monty is an anthropologist and founder and CEO of Habitus, a social enterprise that uses anthropology, emotional intelligence and educational psychology to rehumanise schools and communities. He's an educator at primary, secondary and tertiary levels. He's also a celebrant. He's a jazz singer, which I didn't know. I'll have to check that out later. A martial arts instructor, an honorary associate of Macquarie Uni, and he's an officer in the Australian Army Reserves. So he spends his time deepening his understanding of how we communicate with each other, how we relate to others, and how we understand ourselves and our place in the world. He's done some work in South India with a marginalised group who were slaves until quite recently, which is pretty extraordinary. And now he's working at home, and as some of you will know, he's worked with our students rethinking Walkabout, which is a long history in college, to become C2C or College to Country, which is an event that will be happening in a few weeks' time. We're hoping that next year and over the next few years we'll continue working with Monty in our setting to ensure that the rituals and the rites of passage and the important parts of our culture that we want to maintain and strengthen and really think through can be further strengthened with his support. But with no further ado, I'll hand over to Monty to give the 2019 annual lecture. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's a nice bio there. It's a bit of fun. I always get a bit scared when the bio comes up because it might set the expectations a little bit high. So today's lecture is going to be about being human, so making a difference through connections and community. So I think it's a bit remiss of me to just stand up here and not try and embed a sense of community and connection between you folks right from the start. So what I'm going to get you to do is very, very quickly is to talk to the person next to you, introduce yourselves to them, and what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to imagine if your personality could be described by an ice cream flavour, what would it be? So for example, I am definitely Rocky Road. Rocky Road, easy tiger, don't start just yet. Rocky Road is, there's a lot going on in Rocky Road, right? It's a very busy ice cream. Some people might find it to be a little bit rich, but what I love about Rocky Road is there's always these little surprises. So that's me. Now what I'd like you to do very quickly, introduce yourself and talk to them. Did you like that? Yeah. So that was as much for my own pleasure as it was for yours. As Hester said, I'm an anthropologist. So if you don't know what an anthropologist is, anthropologists are fascinated by our humanity. So I'm fascinated by our humanity in all its shapes and forms, which is one of the reasons why I love seeing you all interact with each other. What a great opportunity to get to know each other, but as an anthropologist, I loved watching you just relax, just enjoy, just be yourselves, just sort of feel into this space. So thank you very, very much. As an anthropologist, I'm fascinated by our humanity from how we've evolved to become this crazy, flawed, mixed-up species that you see before you, to how this flawed physical species has been able to move around and migrate and populate nearly every square inch of the earth. Now the thing is that we've been able to migrate to every square inch of the earth, and we haven't just survived, we've actually thrived. Right? We've thrived not because we've done the same things in all of those different places, but precisely because we've done things differently. So as an anthropologist, I'm fascinated by our diversity, both biological but also cultural. What are the things that we have had to do to be able to survive? And what are the things that we've had to do to be able to thrive? What are the things that we have had to do to meet the challenges that the world has placed before us? How have we had to communicate and find meaning and work out, who am I? What's my place in the world? What's the point of being here? How have we communicated that with ourselves? How have we communicated that within groups, within our communities? How have we communicated that between communities? How have we had to imagine different possibilities and different ways of being so we've been able to meet the challenges that the world has placed before us, that the environment has placed before us, so that we have been able to adapt and change and remain resilient as a species and thrive? The truth is that in order to do this, we've had to come together. We've had to have the capacity to let go of old ways of doing things, imagine new possibilities, experiment, explore, make loads and loads of mistakes, and try and enjoy ourselves along the way. Now, I want to tell you a very quick story about my experience of anthropology, specifically through the work that I've done in my PhD research. So, as Hester said, I did a lot of work in South India. If you know India, it's like a little peninsula, right? And down the southwest coast of India is this beautiful place called Kerala. Really, really gorgeous. Beautiful, perfect, pristine beaches. Have you been there?
I'd love to go.
Oh, well, hopefully. Yeah, great surfing. Now, just like in Sydney, you've got the beaches, and then you go up into there's some lovely volcanic areas and some mountain ranges, and this is what's known in India as the Western Ghats. It's also known as the Spice Bowl of India. It's such a beautiful, rich volcanic area that it is full of lush vegetation, full of natural wildlife. It's so rich that this is where the colonials used to go to basically set up and sustain that amazing, that very profitable spice trade that they had. It's the kind of place where you wake up in the morning and you can smell the coffee beans actually growing in the plantations. It's the kind of place where you can smell, and I'm closing my eyes because I can smell it right now. You can smell vanilla beans, you can smell cardamom, you can smell curry leaves, you can smell tea, you can hear monkeys, you can hear elephants. Sometimes, if you're not very lucky, you can hear tigers. It's an amazing place. It's an absolute delight to the senses. Now, nestled in this amazing place is, in the forest, is a very rich and diverse indigenous population. And I had the privilege of being able to spend 18 months with them and learning about their stories and their rituals and their customs and their practices. What was more a privilege, the greatest privilege though, was the fact that this was an incredibly marginalised community. As Hester said, these are people who were slaves until quite recently. So while slavery was officially abolished by the British in the 1800s, it continued, some would say, till the 1940s, but I would argue it still continues today under the guise of indentured labour. So people, even though they're not slaves, they would be heavily indebted into landowners, and because of that they could never leave. They would never ever make any money, but they were still working really, really hard. So this is a community of people who have faced massive social, economic, political exclusion and marginalisation. And I was really interested, I was fascinated, I was honoured to be able to share their stories and learn a little bit about how they were able to remain resilient. How they were able to hold on to a sense of themselves in a world where everybody was telling them how to be, how to live and what to do. A place where and what a lot of people don't realise about the Indigenous community in India is that they are so low on the social hierarchy that they're even below the caste system. They don't even rate on the caste system. So I was just compelled to learn about how they were able to get up every morning and face the world in the context of such hardship. Now, the simple truth is that nobody did. Many people chose to take their own lives because it was such a hard existence. But for those that did decide to stay on this earth, I was afforded a unique, and as I keep saying, a very privileged access into some of the truths that they hold on to as they make sense of their life and as they attempt to engage with the challenges that the world places before them. Now, one of the things that they do, this is an illiterate community, a community that has been excluded from schools, that isn't allowed to write, and so they have very complex ways to hold on to cultural information. One of the things they do is that when someone dies in this community, their belief is that the spirit of the deceased goes out into nature, and for particularly important ancestors, that spirit comes back into the world of the relatives in the form of a stone. And so they keep these stones, they put them in their houses, they make little shrines to them as well. For really important ancestors, the stones are placed in locations all around the region. Now, the thing about these stones is that they become representative of the family members, but they also become representative of the stories of those family members. So whenever you see the stones, you're immediately taken into a world that reminds you of the deeds that they have done, the good ones and the bad ones, the stories that they have told, the experiences that they have had, the relationships that they have had. Now, when somebody dies, the tradition is to sing a song. It's called the Penapartments. It roughly translates to the death song, or the corpse song. Now, the song goes for 3 days. And the tradition is to tell the song, to sing the song, and the song is a recitation of the complete cultural history of that particular community. The Pani is what their name is. Pani just means labourer or slave. And so when they tell the story of the Pania community, they recite this story from the moment of creation right through each and every ancestor up until the ancestor or the story of the most recently deceased ancestor. Now, as they're reciting the story, they're also creating an imaginative landscape of the stones. They're telling the stories of the ancestors. They're telling the stories, or they're narrating a story that is located within a geography. So what's happening is that when they sing this song, which goes for 3 days and nobody ever learns, it's never taught, but somehow it's imbibed in their bodies. And what happens is when they're telling this story, they construct a rich invocation of ancestry, of genealogy, of geography, of topography, of cultural history, of instruction, of ritual. When they recite the stories of the ancestors, they talk about brave deeds that were done or grave mistakes that were made. They also talk about ecological knowledge. So, for example, where there's medicinal herbs or potable water or dangerous areas to go to because that's where the spirits are. And it was an amazing story that they would tell. And the beauty of this story is that it is what you would call in anthropology an example of material culture, where things that are held on the inside of people are brought outside and made a part of the social world. It's an example of what you might call embodied cognition, where the things that are happening inside people are brought outside of us and made part of our bodies and made part of the social world. It's an example of what you might call distributed cognition, where the things that are inside us are distributed around a group of people. And this is really important because what it does is it gives us increase processing capabilities as a species. If I have ideas that are just locked inside of me, that's where they remain. If those ideas and those stories are brought outside of me, then they become part of a social group and we can process that information together. We can hold on to that information together. We can engage in forms of innovation that enable us to deal with the challenges of the world that we are born into. We can pass on those innovations when people who have come up with awesome ideas die. And what this does is it reminded me of the importance of connection and community, not just to feel good, but to increase our capabilities as a species, to increase our capabilities as a people. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you an opportunity to experience this. I'm going to get you to do one activity. I'm going to say 5 words. You're going to remember these 5 words whilst you're doing this one activity. Whilst you're doing that activity and remembering the 5 words, I'm going to pose 3 questions. So now that you're prepared, what I'd like you to do, who knows how to do Incy Wincy Spider? Yeah, pretty easy, right? Easier for some. Okay, so now that you're doing Incy Wincy Spider, what I would like you to do, what are they teaching in primary schools nowadays? I tell you what. So, okay, just for clarification, if I can get you to get the thumb of your right hand and connect it to the index finger of your left hand. Beautiful. And the index finger of your right hand connected to the thumb of your left hand. And you're just sort of swapping them around. And if you're particularly clever, what I'd like you to do is every so often move that index finger or that thumb around to your other fingers. That's only if you're particularly clever. Okay? I want you to keep doing that because what I'm going to do whilst you're doing it, I see I've already lost a few of these. Whilst you're doing that, I'm going to say 5 words, and I want you to try and remember these words. Whilst you're doing that, the words are tree, highway, mirror, Saturn, and electro. Okay, keep doing that, because now I'm going to ask you 3 questions. The first question is, what is 23 times 8? I want you to process that on the inside. Now what I'd like you to do is to list, in your mind, I'd like you to list the last 5 letters of the alphabet and build backwards. And now I'd like you to name the first 3 people that you saw before you came to this event, just inside. Which is wonderful because this is one of the points that I'd like to bring up. Before you started confirming with others or conferring with others, who can remember all 5 words? Few people? Put your hands up nice and tall if you can remember 5 words. Excellent. Who found it really hard to remember all 5 words? Put your hands up nice and tall. Okay. For those of you that remembered all 5 words, I'd love to know, what was your strategy? Image. Creating an image. Excellent. 2 more. What was your strategy? Creating a story. Beautiful. And 1 more. What was your strategy? Who else had a strategy? Yes?
You hear you saying them and you remember how you said it.
Wonderful. So creating almost like an auditory model. Beautiful. I love that. Excellent. So here's the thing, folks. Working memory is actually quite limited. Right? It's focused, it's directed towards immediate goals. There's this thing going around in educational psychology, the law of 7. It's this idea that we can hold 7 bits of information in our brains for 20 seconds. It's actually not correct. It's more like 5. 5 plus or minus 2, but we like to talk ourselves up. But the truth is that working memory is limited. We can actually only remember 4 to 5 things for about 20 seconds unless we process them. So the question is, how do we extract meaning from our experiences? How do we make sense of the world? What strategies do we use to negotiate the limitations of working memory? And there are a number of things we do. We evaluate. Okay, we ask ourselves, do I agree with it? Do I not agree? What's missing? What do I want to know more of? How can I apply it, for example. We repetition and practice. So this auditory modelling, that's an example of repetition and practice. We talk about things and we think about things. We think elaboratively and illustratively. So we build upon existing knowledge. So we use imagery. Someone used an image before, created an image. Imagery includes story. It's the same part of the brain in the frontal cortex. We organise things. We make sense of things using structures. And we use external support. So, for example, we'll question, we'll create frameworks, we'll create charts or images, we'll create artefacts of material culture to help us remember. We'll talk about things with others. So, for example, I may remember 3 words, but somebody else remembers 2. And between us, we have what is known as distributed cognition. Now, this is really important because human experience is how we process the world and how we find meaning. What we process, we learn. But we don't only process through the mind. And what I was explicitly trying to do was kind of tie up bits of your mind so that you weren't able to use some of your instinctive tools that you use in every day. We take it for granted how much we use these tools in trying to make sense of our experiences. The truth is we don't just process information, we don't just process the world through our minds, we actually do it through our bodies. Living is processing. The lived experience is the best method of learning. The lived experience is basically another way is a way of describing the word habitus. That is the name of the business that Hester talked about. Habitus is just our lived experience. How do we use the lived experience to make sense of our world? How do we use the lived experience to make sense of our place? As Hester said, I'm also in the army. This is one of the things that kind of throws people for a bit of a tailspin. I work with kids, I sing songs, I like to tell stories, play games, and I'm in the army. And people are like, what is that about? Now here's the thing, right? I went to a military school. I was raised in a military family. My dad was a lieutenant colonel in the army. I was always drawn to the army in some way. I have always loved the physical, the mental, the emotional challenge that's involved in it. I love playing in the dirt as well, so that's a big part of being in the army. I love being outdoors and being connected to nature. And I was actually in the army when I was in my early 20s, back in the 1990s. But it wasn't a particularly great place to be if you had brown skin or were not particularly hypermasculine. So in case you haven't noticed, that's me. But there was this amazing speech that was given by the then Chief of Army, David Morrison. He said, a standard you walk past is a standard you accept. And it was that moment that I knew that this was a very divisive moment in the army. This was a moment that I wanted to be a part of. I'm an anthropologist. I know a thing about diversity. So, like, you know what? I'm going to get my self-righteous soapbox and I'm going to pick it up and walk to the recruiting office and I'm going to be a part of this change. I'm going to help them make a difference. I'm going to go up to this place and I'm going to share all my knowledge and let them know what I think about diversity and acceptance and inclusion. And I got through the selection process and I rocked up to the army and I was actually really fascinated by how many like-minded people were already there. I found it compelling. I found it really consoling. It restored my faith in the Defence Force. By the same token, there were also a lot of people in the army, and still are a lot of people in the army, who are ideologically and philosophically diametrically opposed to me. And I found that fascinating and compelling. And it restored my faith in humanity. Because one of the things that I've learnt by being in the army is that we can achieve amazing things, not in spite of our differences, but precisely because of them. You see, the story of our species is that we are creative, we're collaborative, we're cooperative, we're also competitive, we're compassionate, we're critical thinkers. And that's just the seeds. Thank you. As mentioned, I teach at the primary, the secondary and the tertiary levels. I've been doing so for 13 years, right? And I was just so frustrated by the fact that students would struggle to think critically. Students would struggle to collaborate with each other. Students would struggle to find creative solutions for complex problems. I often found myself asking the questions, how can we prepare our young people to deal with the challenges that the future holds? We all know the challenges, right? Challenges like climate change, economic upheaval, political change, rising inequality. The prospect that up to half of the university degrees and half of the jobs that you're doing right now will be obsolete in 10 years. The possibility that the majority of jobs and degrees that are going to be in play in the next 15 years haven't even been thought of yet. That's pretty intense. How are we preparing our young people to deal with that kind of world? How do we reinvigorate a sense of our humanity and thrive in the face of an uncertain future? I argue that's what we've always been doing as a species. What kinds of skills do we need, though? This is the difference. What kind of skills do we need to stand out in an era of rising automation? If information and manufacturing can be automated, right? Anything that can be automated will be automated. And if it's going to be automated, it's not going to need you. So what is your worth? What is your value? What is the difference that you're going to make? As an anthropologist, these are precisely the questions that I'm here to answer. And so my work with Happiness is all about going into schools, crafting rites of passage, strengthening relationships and communities, developing emotional intelligence, social skills, resilience, for example, using music, martial arts, play and storytelling to just connect with our humanity. The goal for us is to get people doing things together to solve problems and imagine possibilities that are collaborative, inclusive and creative. The truth is I actually have a lot of faith in humanity. And for those of you that I've had the pleasure of working with, you'll know that, it's a bit of a mug's game, don't tell Hester this. Basically all I do is I set the conditions where you can just be yourselves, where you can have authentic and vulnerable connections and conversations with each other. All I do is set that up. And once that's done, you are the ones that do all the magic for me. And hopefully that's what you've seen. Right? The beauty is that if we allow people to be people, if we connect with each other, if we connect with our humanity, then that's all we really need to do to make a profound difference in the world that we live in. In essence, by doing things together and doing things in a way that embraces our humanity, we can achieve something truly amazing. We can become agents of change. But the story's complex. And that's precisely why I love it. Whilst I do have faith in our humanity, I also know that these are dangerous times. We often superimpose simplicity and order upon complex human natural phenomena. But we really need to be sceptical of attributing simple solutions to complex problems. And we see it at the moment, right? This is what's happening. They talk about this rise of division in the world. And one of the things I do is I do a program called Men After Me Too, right? It's this program where we get people together to talk about what's a bloke supposed to do as a result of this profound social change. And the idea is that now more than ever, we need to bring people into a space where we are open to dialogue, where we are open to conversation rather than shutting it down. But the problem is that we all sit around in our homes behind our computer screens and we get sort of self-righteous and indignant and angry when we hear something posted or we see something posted on social media. And if we're not getting self-righteous and indignant because we're seeing something that disagrees with us, we simply propagating a cycle of information that supports our existing worldview. Right? This is the epistemic bubbles or the echo chambers that we're filling ourselves, filling up our lives with. Right? And what they talk about this as, from a philosophical perspective, is known as the privatisation of virtue. The privatisation of virtue is this idea that with the erosion of the church, with the erosion of the state, nobody has the right to tell me what to believe, to tell me what to value, to tell me what is what I want. Yeah? You do not have the right to tell me. And as a result of that, what we do is we close ourselves off and we only allow ourselves access to information that supports the confirmation biases, the cognitive biases, that supports the existing worldviews that actually make us feel really comfortable. And let's be honest, they make us feel comfortable specifically because this is a time of immense change. It is incredibly challenging. But the truth is, there's always been a tension between wanting to stay the same and wanting to change. In fact, that's been the source of some of our greatest innovations. I don't know if you know about this, but in the Fertile Crescent, 8 to 12,000 years ago, it's a bit of a broad range, it was this amazing, like environment, amazing area of rich vegetation, of lush vegetation, lots of food abundance, lots of resource abundance. And people started to develop civilization, developed ways of engaging in agriculture, really wonderful mechanisms through which to survive and to thrive in that particular environment. But because they were thriving so well, there was massive population growth. Because there was massive population growth, it didn't sustain the numbers and people had to move. And because people had to move, they moved to these other areas, and what they wanted to do was they wanted to recreate the ways that they were doing things in the Fertile Crescent, but do them in a different environment. So they were kind of caught in this crazy tension between wanting to stay the same, but also wanting to be different. And as a result, they had to be incredibly creative and innovative to survive in those different places. But the thing is that this tension between wanting to change and wanting to stay the same, this desire to feel comfortable in a world that is incredibly challenging, in a world that is incredibly complex, it affects the decisions that we make. It affects the way that we lead. It affects the way that we choose our leaders and the people we look to guide us. What I do know is that humans were not made to survive on our own. As individuals, we actually need each other. I mean, I love it because even in the military sense, everything we do is based around security, right? You cannot have an individual in a place on their own unless they are secure. It's the same thing with human evolution. All the mechanisms, the social structures that we have in place are designed to keep us safe in incredibly dangerous places. And so we increase our ability to deal with complex problems, with challenging circumstances by coming together. The antidote is community. The truth is, we actually have everything we need as a species. As I said before, we're not a perfect species. We have so many physical flaws. I mean, have a look at your knees, first of all. That's a perfect example of the fact that we have what's known as design flaws or kludges in our biology. We are not perfectly adapted to any particular environment. We don't have big horns or body armour to protect us from interspecies conflict or interspecies conflict, right? So we have to be able to adapt to all the different environments that are around us. If there's anything that's quintessentially human, it's our variability and our adaptability. The fact that we are imperfect actually enables our ability to do things differently in different places. There's nothing inherently human except for our ability to come together, our ability to process information communally through symbols and structures and practices, our ability to do things differently, and our ability to cope with change. That's why we have rituals, for example. I don't know if you know this. It's just the end of the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah. I think yesterday was the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, right? And interestingly, in Hebrew and in Arabic, there is a word for human, which actually means forgetting. Humans forget. We have to forget. We have to be able to forget if we're going to leave behind one way of doing things and adopt a new way of doing things. It's an amazing capability. It's also a real challenge. We forget, right? So because humans forget, we need to use things to remind us of the values or the new learnings we have had, the mechanisms through which we have dealt with the challenges that the world has placed before us, and that's why we have rituals. Rituals and symbols and structures, they're constant reminders that keep us anchored to the values and the perspectives that have enabled us to thrive in certain environments, but they're not set in stone. People forget. We can forget. We can change. And so we use rituals, we use this ability to talk to each other, to process information, so that we can undertake the transformations required to deal with the inevitability of a changing world. Humans are naturally meaning-making creatures. We can't help ourselves. We're constantly making meaning from our experiences. The example I use for this is the existentialist. Now, bear with me, folks. I know when someone says existentialism, it can turn people, make people a little bit sleepy. Bear with me. Okay, so here's the thing. The French existentialists, that's my jam, right? The French existentialists after World War II. Now, these were people that were around in the world when there was so much devastation. There was the Holocaust. There was Hiroshima, Nagasaki. There was just the destruction of World War II. All of this happening on the back of the Great Depression, right? And this is a time when people couldn't help themselves but ask the big question, what the heck is it all about? Why are we here? What is the point? How can there be a God to allow this to happen? For the French existentialists, their answer to that question, Sarge, Nietzsche, was, well, there isn't one. There is no God. There is no point. There is no meaning to existence. For a lot of people, that was a bit too much. We call them the nihilists. But the existentialists said, well, you know what? If there is no inherent meaning to our existence, then it can mean anything we want it to. If it can mean anything we want it to, then we can actually find meaning. No. We can actually create meaning for ourselves. More importantly, if there's no divine meaning, or there's no inherent universal meaning to existence, then we can come together to explore meaning together, to explore what it means to be human. And the ability to come together as human beings to explore meaning, whether there's a meaning or not, is incredibly meaningful. It's a good game, isn't it? I love the existentialists. The thing is that you as young people are thrust into a dynamic and diverse community. You all come from different places. This is one of the wonderful things that I was picking up from the stories that you shared with me in the time that we spent. You all come from different places. You all have different stories. But when you all come together in this space, it provides a range of challenging experiences that can actually bring up all these different emotions, but all these different opportunities to learn through those experiences. Those experiences can be challenging, joyful, frustrating, but also life-changing. That's what you shared with me. And so what we need to do is we need to provide a safe and supportive environment for which to learn from each other and to learn from the world around us. This helps us to develop these amazing skills like empathy and reflection, to make sense of our world through dialogue and communication, trial and error, perspective taking. It's a practice that values experience, it values difference, and it opens the doors for communication rather than shutting it down. And this is why what we do when we come together as a community, if we do it well, is we create a community of inquiry, not a community of consensus, not a community where we simply reinforce the existing beliefs that we have, but a community where we can pick things apart. But this requires openness, a willingness to hear different voices and perspectives that can differ greatly from ours. A willingness and an openness to hear difference without judgment. By offering a space to have courageous conversations so that we can think critically and explore the contradictions and the complexity of the world that we live in, explore the contradictions and the complexity of identity, of relationships, of purpose, of achievement and challenge. By sharing our vulnerability and authenticity in these spaces, we actually offer ourselves a wonderfully transformative experience. It's this sort of work that I'm currently doing with the Army. What we're doing is we're looking at how we can have collaboration, critical thinking to expand our learning. as we communicate across differences, to question each other and ourselves. The stuff we're doing in the army is all about how to build a space, how to build a culture that fosters cognitive diversity, different ways of thinking. More importantly, how can we foster contributory dissent? The idea that we can question something when we don't think that it's right, but question it in a way that makes it better. How can we distribute leadership, distribute that cognition, and increase our processing power as a people, as a force? By moving away from a model that just holds on to one kind of specific hierarchy and opening up this lovely, productive dialogue that engages in our hearts and our minds in a connected community, we open up the possibility to disagree fundamentally, but still learn to grow together. Because everyone has a story, right? The stories we tell ourselves become the lens through which we view the world. The stories that we tell others become the lens through which they view us. One of our greatest challenges is to create a culture where everyone's voices are heard, where everyone's stories can be told, where we can actually acknowledge and appreciate differences. The Central Australian Indigenous communities call this dargery, or deep listening. They see this as incredibly transformative. It transforms both the listener and the speaker. But it requires responsible, ethical humanity. It requires responsible, ethical leadership. It requires creative leadership. The ability to transform through leadership. When I think about what makes a good leader, I mean, there's so many things, right? A great leader, I mean, I always think about it, a great teacher is someone who teaches, who learns more than they teach. A great leader is someone who listens more than they instruct. I think a great leader empowers others rather than trying to hold on to that power for themselves. Nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. Teddy is one, right? Be prepared for a few more cliches. You don't have to know everything, you just have to ask the right questions. You don't have to be the best to be a good leader, you just have to bring out the best in the people you're working with. When I think about the story of our evolution, what springs to me is that you cannot learn anything if you stay in your comfort zone. We've always had that tension between wanting things to stay the same and wanting things to change. You can't learn anything if you hang around with people you agree with or not. Anyone at the vanguard of anything must be an imposter. Just a quick show of hands. Who has ever felt like they are suffering from imposter syndrome? Put your hands up. If you have ever felt like you're in a place and you're like, I don't know, they're going to catch me out, I'm a bit of a fraud. Don't be afraid, put your hands up, right? And look around. What I'm here to tell you is that is okay. You need to be out of your comfort zone to be able to lead the way. You need to take risks. You have to make mistakes. You cannot be perfect. You have to be unapologetically human. In the consultations that I've been doing with Drews, what I've loved is hearing the values behind the C2C or the walkabout ritual that you have. Right? This is the beautiful thing about you opening up your worlds to me and sharing your stories with me. Because what I heard was these amazing values. Values of connection, of belonging, of identity, of vulnerability, of authenticity, of fun, of experimentation, of freedom and safety, of the feeling of freedom and safety to explore who you are in this incredibly formative period of your life. This is a potent moment in your lives. You're in a position to learn so much about yourselves, about each other, and about the world that we live in. At this moment in your lives, you stand at the vanguard. You have the privilege of being an imposter. You have the privilege of not having to know what to do. You don't have to. You have the privilege of being able to make a very important choice. Who do you want to be? What kind of world do you want to live in? What do you need to do in order to make that world a reality? Truth is, you actually don't need to go too far to find the answers to these questions. You only need to look inside of yourselves. As I said before, we actually have everything we need inside of us, right? But you can also look around you. The values of the collegiate way can be an essential platform to develop the social consciousness, the social conscience, and the connection required to make a difference. Decentralisation, academic leadership, social stability, and a genuine appreciation of diversity. These are the foundations of a successful collegiate system. Tether yourselves to your humanity. Remain connected to your humanity. Now more than ever, this is important for us to remember as leaders, but really just for us to remember as people, as human beings. Difference is our teacher. Diversity is our strength. From a biological level, we need diversity. Where are my doctors? We need diversity, right? To survive. From a cultural level, we need diversity to survive. Perfection is not just a myth, it's actually pretty dangerous, right? In this world of hyper-positivity where everybody has to be their best selves, and I'm not saying don't be your best self, but I personally find it a little exhausting. So what I'm asking is be your authentic and vulnerable selves. Be your true selves. Because the fact that we are vulnerable, the fact that we're imperfect, the fact that we are flawed doesn't make us failures. It makes us human. The fact that we are flawed, that we're invulnerable, that we're imperfect, is the very reason why we need each other. The fact that we need each other is why we come together and create communities. The fact that we have communities is why we create cultures. And the fact that we have each other is the very reason we've been able to survive for so long as a